welcome. Federal government vows stiffer penalties against companies involved in oil spillage in the country, set to review the National Oil Spillage Detection and Response Agency Act. Senate Committee on Finance says no provision in 2022 budget for 5,000 naira payments to vulnerable Nigerians as Nigeria Labour Congress kicks against palliative measure on fuel subsidy. Once again, the President directs all security agencies in the country to respond more effectively to those challenging the sovereignty of Nigeria in whatever way. And France and United Kingdom resolve to break business model of people smuggling following deaths of 27 people in the English Channel. Plus, we have international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's export trade volume seen leading in Africa as it's projected to hit $112 billion by the year 2030 in latest report by Standard Chartered Bank.
On sports news tonight, German tactician Ralf Rangnick is close to finalizing a deal to become Manchester United's interim manager as they seek a replacement for the sacked Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
And from Abuja, traders of motor parts in the nation's capital resist attempts by officials of the Standards Organization of Nigeria to enforce quality control and arrest culprits.
It may no longer be business as usual for companies found to be responsible for oil spillage in the country, as stiffer penalties now await them. And this warning is coming from the Minister of State for Environment, Mrs. Sharon Ikeazo, who announced that the federal government is set to review the National Oil Spillage Detection and Response Agency Act. The pronouncement comes on the heels of the latest oil spill in Nimbe, Bayelsa State, which the minister blamed on sabotage by locals, while noting that a strong legal framework has become expedient to stop the menace. Our State House correspondent Gloria Umezoke has details of the weekly ministerial briefing at the State House today.
The weekly ministerial briefing continues with the Ministry of Environment taking the stage. The latest devastating oil spill at the oil mining license OML 29 in Nimbe, Bayelsa State, and a threat by the government to heighten sanctions on oil companies through National Oil Spillage Detection and Response Agency tops conversations at this briefing.
Right now we are trying to amend the NOSDRA Establishment Act to give them more powers to put punitive measures in place for the oil companies that are responsible for the oil spillage that is going on in Nigeria. We need to have a stronger legal framework in place to protect the environment from oil spills.
We do post-spill impact assessment. So the post-spill impact assessment certainly will be done, and that will show us the situation with biodiversity in the area, the level of impact, and we will also suggest what needs to be done further.
Building on this, the Environment Minister gives an update on the Ogoni land cleanup exercise touted as slow.
There was a picture I saw. It was like a Hiroshima site. You remember Hiroshima in Japan? It was terrible. So this is something we have to tackle head on. We're beyond talking and having workshops. I want the cleanup to be as transparent as possible, and for it at the end of the day to benefit the people of Ogoni.
Nigeria has the highest rate of death from smoke-induced illnesses in the world, according to the minister, and most of the victims are women. The implication of this is huge, particularly as many Nigerians now turn to coal as a cheaper alternative to gas.
The rate of firewood wood cutting has increased. We monitor through our national parks and all that, so we must give them alternative, clean cooking.
Just like coal, gas flaring, which is another major carbon emitter, is all the more reason why the federal government is expressing worry, particularly because Nigeria has committed to a net zero carbon emission by 2060. The big question now is how feasible? From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezoke, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, efforts to enhance transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector remains a top priority of the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. And this is coming from the Executive Secretary of NATI, Dr. Oji, who announced that the 2020 Oil and Gas Audit Report will soon be ready for public presentation. He was speaking at a meeting in Abuja.
Our oil and gas report for 2020, the oil and gas report for solid minerals, and the one for fiscal allocation and statutory disbursement audits are nearing completion. I participated in the review of the reports yesterday with our consultants, and that review is ongoing as we speak. I do expect that by the end of today, at the end of this week, we would have a specific date when that will be submitted to the board for consideration and approval. And that will also help us in making sure that our reporting is frequent, is regular, is new, and is current. As of today, Nigeria as a country is in very good standing before the global EITI in terms of current information and data on our brand new website, which you can access at the touch of a button.
And as the subject of fuel subsidy removal returns to the front burner, the Nigeria Labour Congress has kicked against the plan to pay 5,000 naira to 40 million Nigerians when the subsidy is finally removed to assist vulnerable persons. In a statement, the NLC President Ayuba Waba describes the proposal as comical, saying, "The total amount involved in this queer initiative is far more than the money the government claims to spend currently on fuel subsidy." The NLC boss argues that apart from concerns on the transparency of the disbursement, the idea subjects Nigerians to what the NLC terms perpetual suffering with a 5,000 naira bait. According to Mr. Waba, the plan to increase fuel price is a recipe for an aggravated pile of hyperinflation and astronomical increase in the price of goods and services. He calls on the government to consider various options that can help Nigeria out of the situation. Meanwhile, in the upper chamber of the National Assembly, the Chairman, Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Solomon Adiola, has revealed that there is no provision in the 2022 budget for the transportation allowance to 40 million citizens. He explains that there is no way the executive would take a unilateral decision on a program which is expected to gulp 2.4 trillion naira without getting the approval of federal lawmakers. Senator Adiola was speaking to journalists after submitting his committee's 2022 budget report to the lawmakers.
For us, we still believe it's still in news because this budget we are considering contains subsidy. And if we are passing a budget already that have subsidy already contained in the document, we cannot speak because that is the document that is currently before us. And for this, you have said yes. Some quarters says the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and was quoted saying that 40 million Nigeria will be paid $5,000 and 5,000 naira as transportation allowance in lieu of the fuel subsidy. I don't want to go into these details for now. I believe that if such proposal is to come to pass, a document to that effect must be sent to the National Assembly for us to see how possible, how visible, if this is, and how do we identify these 40 million Nigeria that are going to benefit from this process. There are still a lot of issues to be deliberated upon and looked into if eventually this will come to pass. And how do we raise this money to pay these 40 million Nigeria? Because I know that even at the subsidy or revenue being raised, are money that are coming in from these so-called oil and other sources of revenue to the federal government. So how do we? This is not provided for already in the budget as we have. We don't have anywhere in the budget where 40 million Nigeria at 5,000 naira equals this amount of about 2.4 trillion contained in that budget.
To security issues now, the President has renewed his charge to all security agencies to double down on their response to all those challenging the sovereignty of Nigeria and creating insecurity through criminality. The Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, stated this after a Security Council meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari today at the State House. The council meeting, which lasted over 4 hours, also discussed the role of security operations in the recent Anambra governorship election.
The president was particularly happy with the fact that a free and fair election was made possible by the INEC and our security agencies, and that is a good assurance to all Nigerians that we are committed to promoting democracy. As we are making progress in our effort to eliminate insurgency, banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and all the other criminalities, that we are not yet where we should be. The Nigerians deserve to live in peace. We appreciated the fact that we are in the season of festivity. So all agencies are committed to providing security for Nigeria, and the maintenance of law and order have been ordered to improve on the activities, intensify surveillance, and minimize, if not eliminate totally, any threat. And you will see an improved response to all those challenging the sovereignty of Nigeria in whatever form, and creating insecurity in whatever form, anywhere.
To Borno State now, where internally displaced persons at the Bakassi camp in Maiduguri have begun moving out, ending their 7-year displacement from their ancestral homes. Their exit is sequel to a 10-day ultimatum issued by the state government to over 6,000 households that have occupied the camp since 2014. The inhabitants of the Bakassi camp are from 4 different local governments and were displaced by the activities of insurgents.
An uncompleted government estate along Maiduguri-Damboa Road allocated to IDPs from Mongunu, Goza, Guzamala and Mate local government areas, the Bakassi camp has accommodated about 36,000 persons for 7 years. However, it's time to say goodbye to the stopgap arrangement as the IDPs dismantle tents and other makeshift shelter ahead of their exit. With the liberation of most local territories in Borno State, the government is now keen on ending displacement in the state. Governor Babagana Zulum had paid an unscheduled visit to the camp and shared a severance package that included food items and cash to the IDPs with an ultimatum to vacate.
They have given us 100,000 naira. I bought building materials worth 40,000. I spent 10,000 to transport them. Then the remaining 50,000 will be used for buying our other needs like food and to transport ourselves back to Mongunu.
About 40% of Goza and Mongunu IDPs have already complied, according to camp officials.
We have total population of 6,973 households. Now, about 1,200 they have left.
Compliance is slower in other parts of the camp. 5 days into the 10-day ultimatum, the IDPs are already asking for an extension for various reasons. There are also reports of flashes of attack in Mate, a concern for the would-be returnees.
Currently, there are people who were not here when he shared money. Some had gone to their farms because herdsmen were encroaching their farms located around Yobe State axis. If they leave it, herders will consume their produce.
We want to go to town and look for our own place to stay, but we can't go to Mate where there's security problems. Who will go there? Nobody. We pray the government listens to our plea for a grace of 5 extra days.
The state government says its intentions are honorable and it will do all that is necessary to protect the people.
The government is not intent in exposing anybody to any hazard. Should there be any problem at any given time and at any given point, the government is equally ever ready to bring them to safety. And of course, also while there, they are also equally going to be given the protection that they required, so that they are not just taken back to their countries, at their ancestral home, and get abandoned.
Whether the IDPs whose status is about to change decide to go back to their ancestral homes or settle in the host community in Maiduguri, it is clear that the government is not going back on its resolve to shut down the camp. Even though relocations is voluntary, exiting the camp is not.
In part two, after the break, despite the hitches recorded in the just concluded election in Anambra State, INEC restates its determination to deepen the use of technology in future polls. That's in a moment. Do join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Federal government vows stiffer penalties against companies involved in oil spillage in the country, set to review the National Oil Spillage Detection and Response Agency Act. Senate Committee on Finance says no provision in 2022 budget for 5,000 naira payments to vulnerable Nigerians as Nigeria Labour Congress kicks against palliative measure on fuel subsidy. Once again, the President directs all security agencies in the country to respond more effectively to the challenging of the sovereignty of Nigeria. And France and the United Kingdom resolve to break business model of people smuggling following deaths of 27 people in the English Channel. As the 2023 general elections draw closer, the Independent National Electoral Commission is restating its determination to deepen the use of technology in the nation's electoral process. The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, says the commission intends to keep on improving on the biometric voter accreditation system during the conduct of subsequent elections. He made this pledge at a strategic meeting with senior media partners in Lagos to strengthen INEC media partnership towards free, fair, credible and inclusive elections.
We have started early for all the elections, and we are going to approach the elections with the lessons that we learned from the Anambra governorship elections. I think the major issue of interest to Nigerians is the functionality of the new technology we deployed in the Anambra governorship election, that is the bimodal voter accreditation system, the BVAS. Now, we have learned a lot of lessons from what happened in Anambra. Remember, election did not take place in Ihiala local government until 2 days later. And it's interesting that I've never had a single complaint about the performance of the BVAS in Ihiala. So that encourages us a lot as we now move into the area council elections in the FCT in February. But before then, we have 6 outstanding by-elections to conduct. So we have a lot of opportunity to further fine-tune the new device.
Meanwhile, as political groups begin consultations to field candidates ahead of 2023, the coalition of Arewa APC support groups are drumming up support for the former governor of Imo State, Senator Rochas Okorocha. At a public lecture in Kano, the groups say they want him to join the 2023 presidential race, citing the need to address disunity and insecurity as some of the reasons for endorsing Senator Okorocha.
These are members of the coalition of Arewa APC support groups, along with their counterparts from civil society groups, singing the praises of Senator Rochas Okorocha, the immediate past governor of Imo State. The groups converge in this hall to endorse the candidature of Rochas Okorocha as APC's presidential flag bearer, come 2023.
To defeat insecurity, hunger, illiteracy, we will apply and strengthen the core tenets of unity, equity, and justice.
What is distinct about Rochas' contributions generally to this nation centers more on education.
to stand here and discuss more on Rocha's Okorocha as our presidential aspirant 2023.
Some beneficiaries of Rocha's philanthropic involvement in education and socio-political development affirm that he is a detribalized Nigerian with exemplary leadership style.
As I'm standing here before you, I can assure you without Rochas in my life, I will have been a qualified Jinchem mechanic. But thanks to Uwele Rochas of Korocha, I'm now a medical doctor.
Most of our leaders today, they go to be served, they go to serve, not be served. Usually they go to take instead of giving out. But this man is ever ready to give us out what exactly we need. And this is what we are badly lacking and we are badly needing at the moment, this sound education. We as youth.
The groups expressed their confidence that Senator Rochas Okorocha is capable of leading Nigeria out of its present challenges through his intervention in educational development and execution of notable projects and programs.
To the judiciary now, the trial of Chidima Ojukwu, accused of murdering Super TV CEO Usifo Ataga, continued today before Justice Yetunde Adesanya of the Lagos State High Court at the Tafawa Balewa Square, with the prosecution calling another witness. During examination, Mr. Oluwo Ifeoluwa, a businessman involved in the sale of phones, laptops and accessories, identified the first defendant, Chidima, as the person who came to sell a laptop at his shop. He said he asked her if she had a receipt of purchase for the laptop and if it belonged to her. According to him, she replied that it was a gift from her boyfriend and that she had 2 laptops, so she needed to sell one to pay some bills. Mr. Ifeoluwa said Chidima asked for 600,000 naira, but they were able to agree on 495,000 naira for the laptop, and only after the forms were filled and documents in his possession was the bank transfer made. He said afterwards he heard the news on social media regarding the murder case and the theft of a laptop. According to him, the name was familiar. He said a few days later the police invited him and his manager for questioning. Without further cross-examination by the other counsel, Justice Yetunde Adesanya adjourned the matter to November the 29th and 30th for continuation of trial. Let's cross over to Abuja now, and here's Linda Akigbe. Linda?
Hello, Ijoma. We move to the conflict which occurred earlier in the day as vehicle spare parts dealers in Abuja resisted officials of the Standards Organization of Nigeria who stormed Akpo, Kugbo and Durumi to arrest dealers in substandard tires and other motor parts. The operation, which took place simultaneously in the 3 locations, was met with stiff opposition from the traders as the enforcement team retreated from the angry crowd.
At the premises of the Standard Organization of Nigeria, SON, in Abuja, a combined team of police, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, and the Department of State Service, DSS, gather for a routine enforcement. Officials of the organization say it is one of their routine operations to reduce the influx of substandard tires and other motor spare parts in the markets. It's a simultaneous operation going on in 3 major motor spare parts markets in Abuja, namely Durumi, Kugbo and the Apo Mechanic Village. The team arrives at the tire section of the Apo Mechanic Village spare part market for their inspection. What seemed to be a smooth operation soon turned rowdy when the enforcement team attempted to confiscate some tires and arrest the dealers. A firm resistance from the traders forced the team to retreat. But this may not be the end of it all.
What we have seen is that some people, because of whatever it is that we cannot be able to fathom, are into importing used tires, which in itself by law is a contraband. But in this particular case, the worst and most frightening aspect is that these second-hand tires that are stuffed are also being polished and wrapped and sold to unsuspecting Nigerians as brand new. So that's why we went out to ensure that we confiscate these products and prosecute the culprits. But you can also see that as we all went out, with combined security of about 70 drawn from the DSS, police and civil defense. We wanted to do this raid simultaneously at 3 locations in the FCT, but lo and behold, we came under heavy and very serious attack, including guns, that eventually our personnel were wounded, the security agents were wounded. The security agents were determined that it should be done, but we had to advise that we should retreat to avoid casualties.
Fairly used vehicle tires are contraband in Nigeria. They are smuggled in from neighboring countries and traded in the open market, raising some questions about the effectiveness of these government agencies to curb the menace.
When the News at 10 returns, Nigeria's export trade volume is seen leading Africa, and it is projected to hit $112 billion by 2030 in the latest report by Standard Chartered Bank. That's on Business News. Join us again. Welcome back to the News at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. It was a success in an operation today by the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, which led to the arrest of one Maduabuchi Chinedu, who is apprehended with 9.3 kilograms of cocaine worth over 2.7 billion naira in street value at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. The 32-year-old suspect is said to reside in Liberia, where he works as a miner. He was arrested during a joint search operation at the Abuja airport with a substance wrapped in candies and concealed in his luggage. Mr. Chinedu told the NDLEA that he left Nigeria in 2018 to settle in Liberia, where he now has a residence permit. He added that economic pressure and the need to raise money to treat his mother for an eye problem led him to seek help from a friend in Liberia, who introduced him to another friend based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, who eventually gave him the drug to deliver in Abuja for a fee of 1 million naira. Meanwhile, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, has received another batch of 172 stranded Nigerians from Libya. This batch makes a total of 330 stranded Nigerians repatriated back to Nigeria through the European Union-sponsored repatriation program. The returnees, who were voluntarily assisted back, arrived at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport last night and were received at the Nako wing of the airport. One of the returnees, 21-year-old Omoni Azizat from Lagos, who abandoned her education when she was 17 years old, expressed regret over her misbehavior and especially for deceiving her father to raise the money for her trip to Libya. To other stories, the Senate Committee on Local Content is giving a deadline of December the 2nd to the major players of the NLNG Train 7 project to appear before it and answer questions on alleged breach of local content laws or risk a public investigative hearing. The $10 billion Train 7 project is operated by the Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas and is aimed at boosting Nigeria's liquefied natural gas output by 35%. NLNG, as well as the promoters of the project, SAIPEM and DEWU, alongside the regulator, the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board, were invited to appear before the committee today, but failed to do so, drawing the anger of members. And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Ijoma.
Thanks a lot, Linda. Investors at the 2021 edition of Foreign Investment Network Forum in Dubai have committed not less than $2 billion to African economies, particularly Nigeria. The opening day of the three-day event saw some of Europe, Asia, Africa and the UAE's wealthiest businessmen discuss opportunities for economic development and wealth creation on the African continent. Our correspondent Mayowa Adekuki reports.
In this room are regional business tycoons, investors, and even Prakash, one of four brothers controlling Induja Group, one of the UK's wealthiest conglomerates. All are here for the Foreign Investment Network's Fin Africa UAE Forum.
However, Africa still has only 18% trade share with UAE.
This trade gap is exactly what Fin seeks to bridge by boosting trade and attracting investments into key sectors in Africa.
please come to Kaduna State and invest in agriculture for export to your countries.
The UAE government proves its interest with the presence of representatives of the Nahyan Royal Office.
We are here to become the catalyst for the growth of Africa as a region.
Themed The Road to a Prosperous Africa, this 5th edition of the annual Global Forum provides the stage for presentations and discussions on topics such as the industrialization of Africa, creating a unified currency as well as wealth for the common man, real estate opportunities in Dubai, and sectors ripe for investment in various African countries.
Isolated desert, Dubai went from a whisper to a phenomenon.
Mr. Induja's ambition for a synergy between the UAE, India and Africa summarizes the day.
It was my dream, which I'm glad that UAE and India and Africa can create miracles in Africa.
At the end of the day, His Highness Sheikh Hamdan Nahyan's office says it will be investing $2 billion in Nigeria. Alongside this is Euroty's promised $10 million investment in Nigeria.
We arrange the connection and the matchmaking before the day of the event. So on the day, people are just meeting themselves and putting pen to paper. This is what we have witnessed today.
Participants ended the day on a merry note with dinner and awards for outstanding members of the business community. Maya Wadegoke, Channels Television News.
Let's take a look at some business news now, and here's Anne Wilder.
Thank you, Ijoma. Hello and welcome to Business News. A new report has projected that Nigeria's export volume trade will hit $112 billion in the year 2030, topping the volume for Africa at 9.7% annual growth rate. That research, carried out by British multinational financial services company Standard Chartered, also mentions that Nigeria's future growth will be driven by its current and future investments in its digital and physical infrastructure and improvements in its business environment. Meanwhile, Standard Chartered has also said it expects global exports to almost double from $17.4 to $29.7 trillion over the next decade, which will be driven largely by 13 markets. The Minister of State for Finance, Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, today held a one-day town hall meeting with beneficiaries of the Economic Sustainability Plan right here in Lagos. According to him, met with beneficiaries from the Southwest and outlined the gradual investment policies that the federal government is implementing to diversify the economy and enable non-oil sectors contribute to the GDP. To the local market now, where the bourse remains in bearish territory in a better part of the week, as investors are still expecting sell pressure on some high-value stocks on the NSE. Will Ebong has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. It's the fourth trading day of the week and equities are still downbeat, sustaining the negative downtrend for 3 straight days. The all-share index dropped yet again, but this time by more than 0.25% today, and 71 billion naira chopped off the value of listed equities. No thanks to some big names across the banking, consumer goods, as well as the oil and gas sectors. Now let's zoom in on the activity chart. Overall turnover was positive as volume, value, and deals were all in the green today. Now stocks of Honeywell made a comeback in today's trading session after Flour Mills assured stakeholders of validity of its acquisition. Honeywell shares price rose 9.76% to close at 4 naira 5 kobo. Now, it's also not surprising that the rally in Honeywell shares pushed it to the top of the trades list as it contributed 52.47 million units of shares to the overall volume. Now, it might be too early to wish for a Santa Claus rally, but investors will be thankful for a strong rebound in Friday's session. And that's the Stock Market Report. And Will Ibang is back to you.
And That's Business News for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Ijoma.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, France and the United Kingdom move to break business model of people smuggling following death of 27 people in the English Channel. And more international news from our London studio. You join us again. Welcome back. French President Emmanuel Macron and US Prime Minister, that's Boris Johnson, that's the UK Prime Minister, I beg your pardon, Boris Johnson, have agreed to do everything possible to break the business model of people smuggling and bring gangs to justice. It comes a day after 27 people died at sea after their boat capsized while crossing the English Channel. Meanwhile, French police have made 5 arrests in connection with that fatal crossing. Simon Pusey has more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. More people have attempted the dangerous English Channel crossing just a day after a record 27 died while trying to reach Britain. Video shows a number of migrants waiting on a bus in the English port area of Dover soon after landing, while Border Force personnel patrolled the area on jet skis. More than 25,000 people have crossed the English Channel so far this year, triple that of 2020. Speaking in Croatia, French President Emmanuel Macron called for more cooperation from European countries to tackle illegal human trafficking. French police have made 5 arrests in connection with the fatal crossing last night. And the problem is not limited to the UK and France.
It's okay. It's okay.
Here, dramatic video shows the Italian Coast Guard rescuing some 300 migrants at sea. Women and young children were lifted aboard the rescue vessel from a boat that was dangerously overcrowded in hazardous conditions. None are thought to have died. At least 8 people have died and 7 have been injured after a car exploded in Somali capital Mogadishu, targeting a UN security convoy. The armed group Al-Shabaab have claimed responsibility for the blast that destroyed buildings and vehicles. Among the injured were several students. According to witnesses, gunfire echoed around the scene. It's still not clear if any UN personnel were among those killed. At least 6 people have died and dozens are still trapped after a fire in a coal mine in Siberia in Russia. Emergency services have been working in freezing temperatures in the Kemerovo region, with local authorities saying more than 235 people have been saved. The rescue operation is continuing to rescue those still trapped. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed condolences to the families of the victims. It is not known what caused the fire to start. Sweden's first ever female Prime Minister, Magdalena Andersson, has resigned less than 12 hours after she came to office. She was announced yesterday but resigned after her budget failed to pass and the Green Party quit her coalition. In a speech, she said it had been a question of respect and she does not want to lead a government that could be questioned in its legitimacy. The Speaker of Parliament will now decide the next step to find a new government. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has announced the country will deploy the army to tackle protests in the Solomon Islands. Images show buildings set on fire and people hurling objects in the streets. Protesters targeted the Chinatown area of the capital Honiara after the government imposed a 36-hour lockdown there.
Our purpose here is to provide stability and security to enable the normal constitutional processes within the Solomon Islands to be able to deal with the various issues that have arisen, and that be done in a climate of peace and stability and security.
The EU's drug regulator has approved the use of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine for children between the ages of 5 and 11. It paves the way for children to be given a first shot as Europe battles a surge in infections. The approval comes as Europe is again the epicenter of the pandemic, accounting for about half of cases and deaths worldwide. North Americans around the world are celebrating Thanksgiving, including thousands of US troops in South Korea. The United States currently has around 28,500 troops stationed in the country, something that the North frequently criticizes. The full menu was the typical one of the American tradition, including roast turkey, beef, mashed potatoes and stuffing.
Last year's Thanksgiving I was back home with my family, and this year I'm obviously in Korea, so it's a little different, especially with the pandemic going on. It's harder to visit family and see family, but we're just out here trying to make the most of it.
And finally, an annual gingerbread competition has begun in Stockholm for its 31st edition. Under the theme Together, 130 participants presented different kinds of creations, including a gingerbread Berlin Wall and a Central Park cafe from the TV series Friends. The competition, which will run until the 9th of January, has 5 categories, including architecture, design and bakery. Winners will be announced on the 19th of December. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Thanks a lot, Simon. To some sports now, here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Many thanks, Ijoma. We start off with some basketball news, and Nigeria's D-Tigers will begin their campaign at the FIBA Men's Basketball World Cup African qualifiers when they take on Cape Verde in their opening fixture in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. It will be Nigeria's first appearance at a major tournament since they finished 12th at the 2021 AfroBasket. The former African champions are drawn in Group A, which also has Uganda and Mali. Ralph Rangnick is close to finalising a deal to become Manchester United Football Club interim manager until the end of the current season. The discussions are already ongoing over a deal that will also see Rangnick remain at the club for 2 years beyond the end of the season in a consultancy role. Well, the 63-year-old is currently manager of sports and development for Lokomotiv Moscow, and United remain in talks with the Russian club over an agreement to release him. Hundreds of fans paid tribute to football great Diego Maradona earlier today on the 1-year anniversary of his death, as Naples unveiled a statue of the Argentine world champion in front of the stadium that was named after him. Football lovers gathered in front of the Stadio Diego Armando Maradona, formerly named the Stadio San Paolo, to remember the Argentina legend, widely regarded as one of the game's greatest ever players, and in Naples is seen as a god. A recently retired MotoGP legend Valentino Rossi has been honoured during the EICMA motorcycle fair in Milan. Now, Rossi, one of motorcycling's greatest and most charismatic champions, announced in August that his retirement from MotoGP at the end of the 2021 season after a quarter of a century in Grand Prix racing. Well, the 42-year-old Italian, nicknamed the Doctor, finished 10th in his final race of the Valencia GP earlier in November to end the season 18th in the riders' standings. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. That's a wrap on sports news. It's back to you, Joma.
Thanks, Ayotunde. And the main news again. The federal government today vowed stiffer penalties against companies involved in oil spillage in the country, as it promised to review the National Oil Spillage Detection and Response Agency Act. And also today, President Muhammadu Buhari challenged all security agencies in the country to respond more effectively to those challenging the sovereignty of Nigeria in whatever way. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Good night.